evening, good morning, good afternoon, whichever part of the world you are, and a very, very warm welcome to these very precious teachings. And so we're all fellow travelers on the path, and deeply privileged and blessed to have Venerable Geshe Lhakdor offer these teachings to us. He's a precious and popular, much in demand teacher. We have been very grateful that he has been doing teachings for our Sangha with the Foundation for Universal Responsibility in Delhi for more than a decade. It started once a year. He was in great demand, so it became twice a year. And we were never able to find a space large enough to accommodate all the people who wanted to participate because of his incredible ability to make accessible the most complex Buddhist ideas in simple terms that Buddhists and non-Buddhists alike could relate to. We are disappointed that we can only accommodate about 100 people into this room to engage directly with Geshe-la, and we have about twice that number following us on Facebook on a live feed. And but we hope that we will be able to sort this out by next week and to expand the number of people who can join us. This really is our first major event using the Zoom format, so please forgive us should there be sort of more than a fair share of hiccups as these teachings unfold. But before I go on to introduce Geshe-la, a few sort of housekeeping issues. I'm not very savvy with Zoom, so my team has given me these instructions, and they will sound very basic to those of you who are regular Zoom users, and everybody these days seems to be one. But we recommend that you keep the cursor within the frame of the Zoom screen so that you can see the control panel at the bottom of the screen to make any changes when you want to ask any questions. And you can consider clicking, there's an open box in the top right hand corner to exit full screen, because then that gives you access to all the controls and options that may open up, and switch to speaker view so that when Geshe-la speaks you will be able to see him full screen. And interestingly enough, in a quirk that Zoom has by my standards anyway, that when you see gallery view displayed, you are really on speaker view. So you need to toggle till you see gallery view. And then when we cut to Geshe-la, you will see him full screen. Otherwise, you'll see him in a tiny box. And we will be delighted if you kept the camera on. And even if it isn't, when you need to ask a question, and that is the second from the bottom, second left from the bottom, a camera icon which you need to put on. And I will just repeat this, but when you need to ask the question, you need to click on the participants button at the bottom of your screen and raise the flag, quite literally. And we will call upon you to ask the question, and my colleague will unmute you. So till then, you will have to maintain silence, or at least we will assume that you're maintaining a silence while you're doing this. And I know that I see so many familiar faces, and that most of you are already familiar with Geshe Lhakdor, and I know I almost always each year embarrass him by a fairly lengthy introduction, and for which he gives me a very monk-like and gentle rap on the knuckles for waxing so many details about him. So with craving Lhakdor's forgiveness for doing this again, but I think it's the introduction is important, certainly for people who are joining us for the first time, and particularly because this is a virtual event, so they can get a sense of him and know him better. Geshe-la is most importantly for us He is the trustee of the Foundation for Universal Responsibility that is organizing this event, and so we all promise to do our best and to be on good behavior. He has served as His Holiness the Dalai Lama as his translator and religious assistant from 1989 for several years. He was has co-translated, co-produced and edited several books by His Holiness. He is director of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala. He facilitates the Science for Monks program and shares his expertise as a scholar of science and philosophy at numerous spaces and contexts, as the director of the Central Archives of His Holiness, a member of the advisory board of the Institute of Tibetan Classics in Montreal and Canada, and of course as the director of a very important Tibetan institution, the Tibetan Library, and head the Science Education Project. He has studied specialized Buddhist philosophy at the Institute of Buddhist Dialectics in Dharamsala and received the Master of Prajnaparamita in 1982, the Master of Madhyamika in 1989, and the Master of Philosophy from Delhi University, where he has also served as a visiting professor. He has been an honorary professor at the University of British Columbia in Vancouver and conferred an honorary professorship by the University of Delhi, and interestingly in the Department of Psychology. So brevity is the soul of wit, and I will not intrude any further between the wisdom and dare I add, the enormous blessing of being able to listen to a great master and a great teacher. And thank you, Geshe-la, for this great blessing and great honor. And we hope that the next one will be in person here in Delhi, at least for those of us who live here, selfishly so, but we're delighted to be able to share these teachings with people from around the world. We have more than 300 people who have registered. So Geshe-la, it's over to you.
Good morning, evening, afternoon, whatever to everybody. And thank you, Rajiv, for this short and sweet introduction. And thank you for the Foundation of Universal Responsibility for constantly organizing such programs. And I very happily accepted this invitation, not because I'm a great scholar or great practitioner, but I accepted it as a wonderful opportunity to share the little bit that I know. And this is also an opportunity to at least online meet many of my friends, or at least hear each other, which is wonderful. Because in the spirit of Buddhism, we always say, when the heart, the feeling of the heart or the mind of two people is close, then the actual physical distance is not that important. And we have a saying which says that the blessings of a Lama is greater at a distance, because sometimes you live too closely, then you may not show any regard or interest in that particular Lama or things like that, or even friendship. So sometimes it is better, that there is a space, as we say these days, social distancing in that way is good. So today's teaching is related to the conversation between Atisha and Dromtonpa. And there is a section called the teachings of the spiritual father, and another section called the teachings of the spiritual son. So the teaching of the spiritual father actually refers to the dialogue or the question answer between Atisha and Dromtonpa. Dromtonpa being the founder of the Kadamba school, and he's really treated as the forefather of all the Kadamba, masters. So therefore that dialogue is called the teachings of the spiritual father. And then the dialogue with dialogue or question answer with Atisha by other students like Mok Lozawa and so forth, that is called teaching of the spiritual son. So each has like 4 chapters each. So this text that we are going to read is the the teaching of the spiritual father, which actually has something like 23 chapters. And what you already got is some verses. And so we'll try to explain that as much as possible. And just for the sake of some people who may not have much knowledge about Atisha, I will just read a few lines about his biography. Atisha is most commonly said to have been born in the year 980 in Vajra Yogini, interesting name of the village. Vajra Yogini village in Bikrampur, the northeastern region of Bengal, located in modern-day Bangladesh. His homestead in the village is still known to the local people as the Ponditar Bita, as they say in Bengali, Pondita Bitar. Even Atisha is called Atisha Dipamkara. You know, there's the Bengali way of speaking things. So that village is still called as the Ponditar Bita, which means the homestead of Pandit, a learned man, which refers to Atisha. So if you read the biography of Atisha, he really mirrors the life of Shakyamuni Buddha. And he was also a young prince like Buddha. And that young prince is depicted as having a natural capacity to swift learning in multiple fields and the practice of Dharma at a very young age. So I wanted to read these few lines. He had become well versed in astrology, writing, and the Sanskrit by the age of 3. Can you believe this? So all this shows that he is an extraordinary person. And able to distinguish between the Buddhist and non-Buddhist doctrines by the age of 10, and would eventually become a master of the teachings of Mahayana, Hinayana, and Vajrayana Buddhism under the guidance of over 115 different spiritual masters. So just to give you a flavor of that, you know, how great he is. Then there is this major story of how he contacted all these 150 teachers, and especially his visit to Swandipa, the Golden Island, and staying there for 12 years, studying from Lama Selingpa, the master from the Swandipa. I mean, if you read, I mean, these days you can read all this online, and there are books also. So please do read it. I have this habit of giving homework also, I think, which is sometimes works better than somebody saying everything. So please do the homework of reading about Atisha. It's excellent, you know, thing that you can read because he's such a special teacher. And in this text that we are going to read, the questioner is the Buddhist master, the Kadamba order founder, Dromtonpa, born in year 1005, and became a very important Tibetan Buddhist master and founder of the Kadamba order, which, with its emphasis on direct practical application of the Buddha's teachings, has remained an inspiration for all schools of Tibetan Buddhism. Especially the main influence by Atisha and Dromtonpa is the mind training practice and the Lamrim practice, or cultivation of Bodhicitta practice, is very unique, which really strongly, and then the monasticism, keeping pure morality. These are the like important influences that Atisha and Dromtonpa left in all the Tibetan Buddhist schools of thought. And again, please read, you know, about him. And he's the master who established this famous center, Buddhist center called Reading, which when His Holiness visited, when he was quite young, His Holiness recounts that just by being there, it was so powerful that he could not, you know, stop virtually crying for a long time. Such is the influence. And of course, we accept His Holiness as the reincarnation of or manifestation of Avalokiteshvara, and Dromtonpa also Avalokiteshvara. Definitely that shows the connection. So there are beautiful stories about that. And without going further, one thing that I would, before I forget, is that if you read the life story, unfortunately, you may not be able to read it in length. There may be short versions available in English. In Tibetan, there are many versions. So one thing that really struck me, and I've started inspiring the lay people also, lay practitioners also, please follow the lifestyle of Dromtonpa. Dromtonpa intentionally remained as an upasika, you know, the lay person with 5, layperson's precepts. He intentionally did that so that ordinary people can, without hesitation, approach him anytime. And it said that in a day, he's invited by many for this and that, purpose. And then he was actually, in terms of his actually maintaining the moral discipline, it said he's much better than a monk. And of course, there is advantage for become a monk or a nun, but that does not mean to say that we cannot become a great practitioner if you remain as a lay person. He's such a wonderful inspiration. And in fact, I was really thinking that we should start some kind of activities or centers in the Dromtonpa. I'm highly motivated by reading his life story. And in the encounter and the dialogue between Dromtonpa and Atisha, it's amazing. I can't read all of this, and you may not also be able to appreciate or understand. But actually, during this dialogue, the dialogue happens not from an ordinary parlance, but almost on a different plane, And occasionally they do all this, miraculous performances, the miraculous performances done by Atisha, done by Dromtonpa, and then appreciating each other's qualities, and also asking very profound questions to each other. Is such a lengthy kind of discourse and beautiful discourse, which we may not be able to share everything, but you will get a feel of that. So I wanted to do that. And during those dialogues, all the great teachers, including Buddha and lineage masters, all the tantric deities, and they are there. Most of the time they are there witnessing all those dialogues. And at certain particular occasion, even Atisha says, Avalokiteshvara, he calls Dromtonpa as Avalokiteshvara. He doesn't call by his name. He calls him Avalokiteshvara, the deity of compassion. And he says, if I had known that you are here in Tibet, I should not have come to Tibet. You are such an highly educated, enlightened person, you see, and in the form of a lay person. And they were able to recognize each other's karmic connection. And it was primarily Dromtonpa who, at the later part of the visit of Atisha, convinced Atisha to continue to stay in Tibet. So Atisha came to Tibet at a late age, but he stayed in Tibet for 17 years and he passed away in Tibet. So, and then while actually he had a very great difficulty leaving his monastery because he already had a lot of responsibilities in the monastery. And then because he has clearly seen the devotion of the Tibetan people and the Tibetan translators who were studying there in India, who many a times tried to invite him, and then told the story of that Tibetan king who passed away for the sake of inviting Atisha. So there are many moving stories. So because of that, Atisha actually, and then also there is a prophecy made by Tara to go to Tibet. So because of this, Atisha had mentally decided to go to Tibet, but his teachers, they were not allowing him to go because they were saying that if you take Atisha away, then the university will be deprived of one of the most illustrious, scholar. So what they did was Atisha went with the Tibetan translators saying that we are just going for a pilgrimage. So that pilgrimage became bigger and bigger and turned out to reach in Tibet, you see, so that's the story. But the permission actually he got was, I think, 2 or 3 years only. And then it was his time to come back to India, because in those days people really, observe the commitment, promises. And then before going back to India, he already had composed this great text called the Lamb of the Path to Enlightenment, Bodhisattva Dipamkara. So he sent that text with the letter, and then all the scholars there in the university looked at this and they all said, what a wonderful text, which summarizes both the sutric and tantric teachings. And if Atish had remained in India, he would never have composed such a text. So he's really fulfilling many great purposes. So let him continue to stay there. So in this way, he continued to stay in Tibet for 17 years and passed away in Tibet. So but the details you should read. So we should in the very beginning, in the spirit of Buddhist teaching, we should really consider ourselves being able to have this access to the teaching of Atisha and Dromtonpa. Now, luckily, many of these teachings of Atisha and Dromtonpa are not only available in the Tibetan community, they are translated and available. His Holiness has given these teachings in many other foreign countries also. So we are really, really lucky. And we'll be able to appreciate the importance of such teaching, especially on such occasions when we are, suffering from this pandemic, you see. Unfortunately, people normally don't realize the importance of these spiritual teachings unless they face some difficulty, some problem. Now we are facing that problem right now. So which is actually a good reminder for all of us to go more within oneself and explore the inner resources, inner qualities to really bring about that well-being, happiness, satisfaction, and to get that boldness, get that conviction, capacity to challenge the ups and downs in life, including the pandemic or whatever. So that's extremely important. So we should feel ourselves fortunate to be able to listen to this text. Okay, so I'll start. So the name of the text is Bodhisattva Garland of Gems. And in the Indian language, Bodhisattva Mani Avali, in the Tibetan language, So one thing that I wanted to mention right in the beginning is all the Tibetan texts that are translated from Indian to the Tibetan language, they start by this first line saying in the Indian language. And then you have the Indian words, Bodhisattva Mani Avali or Ashtasasrika Paranja Paramita, whatever. This is to show the authenticity of the teaching. The Tibetan masters wanted to say that what we have preserved and what we are teaching today is not something that we have fabricated, but these are authentic teachings coming from India, the source of the Buddha Dharma. And the devotion to that original source by the Tibetans so much that many Tibetans, even when they have composed a text in the Tibetan language, still they would, as if it is translated from Sanskrit, they would say in the Indian language. So this is wonderful. The second purpose of saying this is that the second purpose of saying this is to remember the kindness of the great translators. If the Tibetan and Indian translators together had not translated these texts, then at least the Tibetans will have no idea what is there in Sanskrit. So therefore it is important to recall and remember the greatness of these translators also. So therefore we have this lines in the beginning in the Indian language, Bodhisattva Mani Avali. Okay. And then the first line says, homage to great compassion. There are many ways of paying homage. In this text, the main discussion, like many other important texts, is, of course, cultivation of bodhicitta, mind training, and so forth. So therefore, and the bodhicitta, the source of bodhicitta is great compassion. The direct source of bodhicitta is great compassion. So therefore, it is very, very befitting to pay homage to that great compassion. Pay homage. We use the English word homage, but in Tibetan we use the word chaksalo, which is something like paying homage, but which actually means the Tibetan word chaksal has two meanings. One is chak means to sweep the dust, and then sal means to seek the qualities. So meaning that when you pay homage, what you need to remember is you pay homage to the great beings so that you are able to purify your negative emotions, which is like the collection of dust. You want to purify that, and not only purify your negative emotions, but you also would like to imbibe the good qualities like loving kindness, compassion, and so forth. So every time you pay homage, you need to remember this. The purpose of paying homage to the great beings is that I refine myself, purify my negative emotions, and equip myself with the positive emotions. That should be the motivation. And also the purpose of paying homage, which also means bow down, the purpose of bowing down to people with great qualities or masters with great realizations is normally that when you are puffed up, when you're arrogant, you don't create space and room for obtaining the higher qualities, good qualities like loving kindness and compassion. In the Tibetan, society, we have a saying which says, if you are puffed up or inflated like a balloon, then there is no possibility to put water on that inflated balloon. The water will just slip by. So similarly, if you are inflated and with little knowledge, little education, if you get puffed up, then you will not develop that receptivity. So therefore, the purpose of paying homage is to develop a sense of humility. And if you develop this sense of humility all the time, you can receive teachings even from a little kid, from the mouth of a small child. And as one Tibetan master says, that if you are able to read, then the whole cosmos, the whole environment, not only from great teachers or human beings, but the whole natural environment that we see around is your spiritual teacher. You can learn so many things from the birds, from animals, from river, from water, from mountains, and so forth. So therefore, it is important to observe this humility. So therefore, you pay homage to the great compassion. Now, why should you pay homage to great compassion? Now here, the text opens by paying homage to, it says great compassion. In one sense, it is not talking about a great being like Avalokiteshvara. It's not saying that directly. It could also mean Avalokiteshvara, but it could also just means great compassion. Not talking about the person who had the great compassion, because that person becomes great because of the quality, the compassion that is there with that person. So therefore, it's extremely important to see the importance of compassion, which is actually, honestly speaking, in today's world, the qualities, inner qualities like loving kindness, compassion, and so forth, these are kind of rare commodities which we cannot buy from a supermarket, right? Any internal mental quality we tend to neglect, we tend not to appreciate, because we have this short-sightedness and also have this ordinary habit of taking notice or paying attention to only what is visible, what is physical, what you can hear, what you can see, what your five senses can approach, and anything beyond the five senses we tend to ignore it. And therefore we have almost everything that we need as far as the material accumulation is concerned, but as far as the internal mind is concerned, we are suffering from internal mental poverty. And much of the problem that we are seeing, including the pandemic that we are experiencing, including the pollution, environmental destruction, and the stupid leaders, threatening to bomb and kill each other, these are all out of ignorance, short-sightedness, stupidity. I don't need to elaborate on this. We really need to understand this. If humanity is to survive, if sentient beings are to survive, if the nature is to survive in unity, in harmony, the only way is to explore these internal qualities and appreciate the positive internal qualities and share it and live this short life like brothers and sisters on this planet. If we are able to do that, as far as natural resources concerned, we have enough. If you don't, misuse it or exploit it, we have enough. The only thing is, because of short-sightedness, because of ignorance, because of greed, we are destroying everything and not able to construct much in a positive sense. Even the so-called material progress is from a perfect or right perspective. I don't know whether we are making any progress. The whole system of education that we have today is not so much about human flourishment. Education must be related to human flourishment, not just reading, writing, and mathematics, and then get a job and earn some money, get married, and then you think, oh, I'm settled. No, you're not settled. So long as you have this internal afflictive emotions like anger and jealousy within you, even if you become the richest person in the world, you're not settled. And this reminds me of a teaching by Nagarjuna, where he says, if you really want to get settled, if you really want to get established, you must strive to benefit others. And if you do not engage in activities benefiting others, you will never be settled. You will never be able to get yourself established. That's so profound teaching. I was highly moved when I read that verse by Nagarjuna. So therefore, for one's own long-term purposes, happiness, and for the happiness and long-term purposes of others, the most important thing is internal mental calmness, and which is possible by developing qualities like great compassion, to whom we are paying homage right now. And then what is compassion? That compassion arises by seeing the reality. In the very beginning of Chandrakirti's Madhyamika Avatara, he talks about 3 types of compassions. Compassion focusing on sentient beings, compassion focusing on impermanence, compassion focusing on lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. So the first, the compassion focusing on sentient beings means seeing the sufferings of sentient beings. You should develop compassion. You should feel sorry for them and try to help them. You see, if you look carefully, we don't see carefully. If you look carefully, there's hardly anybody. The rich people have their own suffering. Poor people, of course, have their own suffering. Educated, the so-called educated people have their own suffering. The so-called Hollywood, Bollywood actor, actresses have their own suffering, which you are seeing these days now on the screen so much, at least in India. So they have their own suffering. So that suffering is rampant everywhere. And it is because of taking wrong steps, doing wrong things, right? So therefore, when you see this, therefore great teachers like Shantideva, he says, you don't have to kill people, they will die. I mean, look at the wisdom. Whereas the so-called intelligent, powerful world leaders, they are bent, to destroy everybody with their nuclear armament and the latest, destructive weapons. They are constructing all the time to flex their muscle and threaten other people. The most ignorant bunch of people, actually, right? And Shantideva says, as I said, you don't have to kill people, they will die. So true. One thing is that death is definite, and the time for death is indefinite. It can come anytime, due to COVID or any other time. So what these Buddhist masters are saying, since death is definite and the time of death is indefinite, so you are not sure how long you are going to live. Therefore, while you are alive, while you live, be nice to others. Every day, smile and be happy. Don't think that you will be happy tomorrow. No, the time to be happy and peaceful is now, at this very moment, when you are listening to this talk or things like that. Just smile, be happy. And there are many reasons to be happy. Many reasons to be happy. If you keep on, many of the sufferings that we encounter today are because we have this tendency to focus only on what is missing, what is wrong. And we have this habit of complaining, and especially because of this self-cherishing attitude, I, me, and mine, I, me, and mine, I need this, I don't have, we are so narrowly focused on this I and self-grasping. And therefore, you always think something is missing, something is not perfect. But if you look carefully, everything is perfect. Each and every individual is perfect. Each and every individual has their own capacity, different capacity, yes. So you don't have to have the same capacity just like other people. It's important for you to appreciate your own capacity. For example, the frog, seemingly very weak, but it has its own capacity. The process of jumping or something which is really beautiful, it has own capacity. We don't have that. So its capacity is to jump around and also to swim, that is his capacity. So we should not expect a frog to climb a tree or things like that. And if the frog is not able to climb the tree, you should not say the frog is imperfect. So all of us, number one, to be happy, we should go within, explore our internal resources, use our brain, and whatever is within your capacity to do the right thing, to do the good thing, even if it is just a smile, just smile, do that, and you will be happy. And you will be happy because if you compare, like you are a human being, not a dog, not a cow. If you are a cow, then which is the hospital to get the proper treatment? You can't use any of these modern facilities, email or iPhone, or when your eyesight is good, you need eyeglass. I've never seen a cow or a dog or a bird using eyeglasses. Right. So what I'm saying is, these so-called facilities that human beings aspire and have. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. They may have their, in certain many cases, they may have their benefit advantage. But then you should look at that other birds and animals which don't have any of these facilities, but they don't create much problem to other sentient beings. And the so-called human beings with this wonderful capacity, with this wonderful, resources, we are creating so much problem, not only among human beings, but also to the environment, to the whole existence, the whole environment. This is because, as His Holiness the Dalai Lama always says, this is because human beings have this wonderful human intelligence. And this intelligence itself is just like nuclear, energy. The nuclear energy itself, we cannot say good or bad. It depends where you use it, how you use it. If you use it properly, you can produce electricity and many good things. If you misuse it, you will prepare a nuclear bomb. So similarly, this human intelligence, if we use it in the right way, you can be His Holiness the Dalai Lama, you can be Mahatma Gandhi, you can be Nelson Mandela. There's so many great people that the world has produced. Just one person can bring so much peace and happiness in the mind of so many other people. If you're able to do that, then you are fulfilling the purpose of your human life. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama very clearly says, having came or born on this planet, in your life, if you're able to bring happiness in the mind of at least 10-20 people, then your visit on this planet is meaningful. And if you're not able to do that, then there's not much purpose. Just eating, sleeping, and going to the toilet. That more or less animals also do, right? So it's important to recognize this. So the main point that I'm trying to drive at is that whether you engage in Buddhist practice or not, the important thing is use this wonderful human intelligence for positive, constructive practices. Make it a point to help others as much as possible. And if you cannot help, again, I'm quoting His Holiness Dalai Lama, and if you cannot help, at least refrain from harming. So there, one of the most important qualities, compassion. So therefore, we pay homage to compassion means we should really appreciate this compassion, study more about the importance of compassion, scientific findings about the benefit of compassion. In our ordinary day-to-day life, the compassion that is extended by mothers to their children and so forth, the compassion that we receive in the hospitals or in many, many other places, is the really compassion that is the source of peace and happiness. That's most important. And therefore, the Buddha, in his own sutra, he says, if you have one quality in the palm of your hand, you have all the qualities in the palm of your hand. And what is that quality? Great compassion. You see, I always, give this example. If you're thirsty, you need to drink water, but not necessarily the whole ocean. Yes, there are so many things to learn in Buddhism and many other, religious texts and so forth. But if you do one practice properly, for example, if you practice this great compassion, you will achieve so many things. And we don't achieve much because we are kind of jack of all trade, a little bit here, a little bit there, and then they share this, just like I'm doing right now, share this superficial knowledge and oneself not doing any practice. That is a problem. So it's really like, going into a hotel and read the list in the menu and not order any food, don't eat anything. And then you will starve, you see. So it's really, really important to make it a point and make it a kind of commitment to do these practices as much as possible. Okay, so I think we are done nearly. Maybe I will explain just next line. Homage to the Llamas, the second line. Homage to the Llamas. Now here you need to know the meaning of the word Lama. People who don't know, they think all the Tibetan monks are Lamas. They will say, Lama, how are you? You know, to any monk they will say. But actually, not all the monks are lamas. The word lama means somebody who is superior. Superior in terms of discipline, superior in terms of recognition, you know, obtained from the public and things like that. So therefore, it is important to understand this. Just like as we say, Anuttara Yoga Tantra. So Lama is like the Anuttara, the highest or superior. And then in the Tibetan society, anybody who is recognized as a reincarnate is also called Lama. But there it is not so sure. It is almost like a status offered by the society. The so-called reincarnate may be genuine one, maybe not genuine one, as it happens in all the societies, you see. But if you are a genuine Lama, then you should really have that high knowledge, great practice, and have that wish to benefit others. And His Holiness very beautifully explains this by saying that a Lama is one who pays more attention to the long-term well-being for many lives than just this life. Lama is one who takes more concern about the well-being of others than oneself. These are qualified lamas. So if you get such qualified lamas, then of course finding a lama is extremely important. You know, in the Tibetan tradition, whether you become a monk and receive the ordination, or whether you receive a tantric teaching and receive an empowerment initiation, in all these cases, lama is a must. It's extremely important, right? It's good. The disturbing though. Okay, so Lama is very important. So therefore here also it says pay homage to the lamas. Now here in this case, the dialogue now starts. Here in this case, Dromtonpa asks the Atisha by saying that right now you, the omniscient one, is here. So during this, period of your presence, we should clear all our doubts, what to do, what not to do. And because of situation, because of disciples, if you, the great teacher, passes away into other realm, and then it's very difficult to ask these questions and clarify the doubts. And especially today we are living in the time of degeneration, and sentient beings are very unruly. And even if somebody gives a very profound instruction, nobody practices it. And they would run more after so-called spiritual teachers who may be actually practicing negative ways of life. So when people follow such, hypocrite, wrong teachers, then it will be very difficult to preserve the Dharma, the authenticity of the Dharma. So therefore, Atisha's, intention was to request Atisha a teaching which you can wholeheartedly follow and trust. So that was his idea. And then, so now in this case, to receive such a qualified, authentic, profound teaching, as I said already, Lama is the must. Qualified Lama is the must. A qualified teacher is must. So therefore, I want to mention here, so those of us who want to look for a teacher or for a Lama, it is important not to rush. Take time. Lamas are not like superhumans. They are also like ordinary people who may have better qualities and things like that. So don't just jump and call somebody as my Lama, my teacher for a few days and then later on say all the nasty things against that Lama. Don't do that. Just like I always say, it is really just like marriage. If you hurriedly marry somebody, it may end up in divorce or in between fighting and so many things. So therefore, you can listen to different teachers. You can take time, experiment them, see how good they are, especially in terms of practice of compassion and of course knowledge also. But what is most important is practice of compassion, the wish to benefit others. Then after repeated test and exploration, if you find that person reliable, then you can, through request or even without request, mentally you can accept that person as your teacher. But don't just rush. It's very, very important. Otherwise, we see many people, who are really looking for somebody's guidance, help, and then they land up in the hand of a wrong teacher. Then instead of solving their problem, their problems are multiplied, increased, right? So it's very important. And Satya Pendita says that even when you go to buy a cow, you need to check carefully by looking at the teeth and so many things. So when you're looking for a spiritual teacher who is not for starting a business, but for guiding you to get that happiness, not only for this life, for many lives to come, therefore it is important to find an authentic teacher. For that, you should not rush, take time, experiment. So therefore, I always, I always recommend people to, meanwhile, if you don't have a personal teacher, you can consider His Holiness as your teacher, because he is reliable and qualified, of course. And so many his teachings and books are available now online. So just do that. That's more than enough. Okay, that's one thing I wanted to say. So therefore, in this, line, homage to the Lama, Atisha then in the long discourse, he talks about this 150 teachers of Sutra, of Tantra, of Bhikshu Vow, and so forth, from whom he received these teachings. And then expresses his appreciation to all these great teachers. So therefore, just recounting, remembering the names of your teachers and recalling the instructions that he has given will have far-reaching benefit. So therefore, it is important to remember one's teacher, especially remember his instruction. So therefore, right in the beginning, it talks about the importance of teacher, which is basically saying, if you read any of the Lavrim text, the first thing they will talk about is the importance of the spiritual master. So this is really talking about how to find a reliable spiritual master and follow it. Okay, so I stop it here. I already spent more time than I should. So.
Oh, no, Geshe. I think the more we listen to you, the more illuminating it is. But you have very kindly and generously agreed to answer some questions.
Yeah.
So I will sort of yield the virtual floor to our guests and fellow travelers. And so if you have a question, please click on the participants button at the bottom of the screen, and in the pop-up window, select raise your hand. And hopefully we will see your raised hand and call upon you, and will request you to make sure that you have activated your camera and started the video. And that is the video icon at the bottom of your screen on the left. Before you do that, and then the host, which is either myself or my colleague Diksha and Seema or Norzen, we have 3 or 4 people posted strategically on the different screens, will send you an unmute authorization. And you press unmute and you ask your question. So here we are waiting. So I see the 3 participants have raised their hands, and I'm not very good at this, so I'm going to request Diksha to spot these 3 raised hands. Yes, please go ahead.
Hello, thank you very much. I really learned a lot in a very short amount of time. I really appreciate it, especially the quote by Shantideva. I have a question as a practitioner lacking in discipline. Yeah. I often find that I end up cutting short my practice. So I do what I can, but then often things come in, like even simple things like having to take my dog out for a walk and then rushing to another appointment. And then I start to rationalize where I think, well, if I'm practicing throughout the day and I'm doing things that are aligned with the teachings, maybe this is enough, but maybe this is also just myself deluding myself. Is this wrong thinking? Or from a lay student, is it enough to do a little practice and then throughout the day continue to live according to how we know to teach and to learn through the Dharma? Or do we really have to focus especially on our practice?
Very, very important question. It can be answered in many ways, but one thing that I would like to mention here is in the Buddhist practice, we have what we call as meditative session practice and post-meditative session practice. So you should have both for your practice. Now, the meditative session practice is like charging the battery. If you want to use your torch in the night, in the darkness, then if you don't charge it, there will be no light, right? So during the meditative session, it's really like charging the battery. You must read the text, do the meditation, energize yourself. And with that, practice, with that energy, then during the post-meditative session, you are compelled to take your dog out or go for your work or socializing, whatever. Make sure that the power or the influence of that meditative practice that you have done during the meditative session influences during those post-meditative session practices. You should remain alert and judge what you are saying, whether you're hurting others or not, whether you're helping others or not, because none of us can continue to meditate 24 hours. Otherwise, as His Holiness says, otherwise we'll all die of starvation, So we have to do work. But that work also could be a kind of Dharma practice if it is influenced by the wish to benefit others or compassion and so forth, which of course is not easy. There is no push button enlightenment. So that's important. But then in some cases, many of the so-called worldly activities, which we at one point of the time thought it's very important, but if you think carefully, it's not important. So you need to cut down many of the less not so important things. This reminded me a Buddhist teaching which says the unfinished work is like the old man's beard. The more you pick, the more it will grow. And there is nobody who has left this world by saying, now I'm dying peacefully because I've finished all my work. There's nobody, never happened. So it is not possible unless you stop. The work finishes, then you stop. If you don't stop, it will never finish. So it's important to see which one is really necessary. And there may be many things which you have been doing when you don't have the Dharma knowledge, but now you realize it's not important, then you stop it. I know one of my friends who is an actress in England. I now forgot her name many years back. So she told me that she spent so much time socializing, and now with the Buddhist practice, she realized how much she is misusing her, wasting her time. And then she stopped many of these socializing practices, and he said she was amazed that there was so much time for her to explore her internal resources or to do the important practices. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you, Geshe. The next question, or even if you sort of raised your hand, are we tracking that, Diksha? Can we move on to the second person? Can you send them a message? Go ahead, sir.
I have a question to the Venerable Teacher. When you were mentioning about Chandrakitrit's 3 types of compassion, one you mentioned about the compassion to sentient beings, and the other was to impermanence. And what was the last one? I just wanted to clarify that.
Third one was seeing the leg of inherent existence of everything.
Inherent emptiness in everything.
Exactly.
Okay. So, I mean, these 3 types of compassion, it's something which we have to integrate and then see how we can practice this as the great compassion, the karuna.
Exactly, because even if you just follow some of the quotations and follow some of the teachers and keep on saying compassion is important, but you will not be able to develop much conviction unless you see the reality, the way things are. Number one, how much people, sentient beings are suffering. Number two, how fragile, impermanent. The second one, impermanence, means how fragile they are. Third, that they don't have independent existence. It's really almost like saying impermanent. We don't have any, non-changing, entity or independent existence. But to our stupid ordinary mind, we think that I will be there forever. And it's because of this grasping we unnecessarily suffer. somewhere in the story of Atisha's encounter with one a female Devi, female goddess, at one particular time, Atisha saw one very elderly woman crying heavily, and then after some time laughing like anything. So Atisha could not understand it. He said, why you are laughing so much and why you are crying so much almost at the same time? And this old lady was saying that I'm crying so much because of seeing the sufferings of all sentient beings. And then she said, I'm laughing because if people really make effort, it's very easy to be happy. Because if you see the lack of inherent existence of everything or fragility of everything, see the reality, then all this clinging and grasping will stop. And all the sufferings arise because of grasping. The running that we are doing today for whatever pursuit is because of grasping and clinging. And if you don't have that, then the great teachers like Buddha and Milarepa, they all said, I'm very happy because I have nothing now. I'm very happy because I have nothing. And we will, of course, think the other way. We'll think I'm unhappy because I don't have. You see? There's the difference.
So I think we have time for one more question, maybe two. So who's the next question? Diksha, do you have the third person?
Yeah, so I would actually like to know, how do we develop compassion? And by great compassion, I cannot fully understand what's the meaning of great compassion, mainly because I always make a mess. I think I'm compassionate, but I make a mess out of.
No, there's a little bit difference between compassion and great compassion. The definition of compassion is to think, how nice if I'm able to remove the sufferings of other sentient beings. But if you enlarge this thinking by saying that how nice if all sentient beings are without suffering, that is called great compassion, because the extent of the scope of the sentient beings is not just one or two or your friends or your relatives, but all sentient beings. So that compassion is called great compassion. Now that great compassion or compassion can be developed, as I already explained while answering the questionnaire before you, where I said that if you really understand the real nature of other people, real suffering of other people, the fragility of other people, that why people are doing so many stupid things and suffering because of ignorance. It's really like, for example, whether it's you or me or anybody, when we see small kids, we develop more like close feeling and more compassion. Why? Even though they are doing many stupid things, but we are able to see their innocence and also a little bit of ignorance. So that part of innocence and ignorance is excusable. We don't get angry. So similarly, the so-called grown-up people, in a way, also committing the same stupid thing because of ignorance. You see, nobody wants to suffer, but they are suffering because of their own doing, because of their ignorance, just like innocent small kids. So when you see this, then you feel sorry. Okay.
Well, thank you, Venerable Geshe Lhakdor, for this very illuminating evening. And we look forward to seeing you next Friday at the same time. We did have a number of other questions, but we will hold them and keep this, as you had suggested, requested, short and sweet, and not get too much wisdom in one go that we're not able to assimilate. Just sort of a reminder to all of us here that your registration is valid, and we will send you a link for next Friday's session early next week. And if you have any comments and suggestions, and I see two suggestions already on my screen, requesting Geshe-la to give sort of some scheduled personal consultation as he does during his visits to Delhi virtually to some of the participants who may want to talk to Geshe-la for about half an hour or something. So we will work on that with Geshe-la and announce this at the next session, where you can log in and hopefully can create a little time to see 1 or 2 people at least every week. So thank you very much. And if you have any suggestions how we can do things better, please write in to us. And meanwhile, have a safe week in these difficult and challenging times. We're recording this from Delhi, which is seeing a huge a spike in cases, and this sort of bizarre in an environment of there being so much fear and trepidation, and yet everything sort of, you know, opening up in a strange kind of fantasy world. So our prayers on behalf of the foundation, Geshe La, and the entire community, that all of us stay well, stay healthy, and through listening to Geshe La's teachings, accumulate insight, wisdom, and merit to better serve our fellow sentient beings. Thank you, everybody, and good night.